where we sit all day is deeply personal. It's not just about like work anymore. I think the future workplace has to be both virtual or remote or digital first, but very much not placeless. Most inclined to explore the ideas around workplace mobility, like let's share. We were going to test, learn, study, like give feedback, and acknowledge failure.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Heroes of Hybrid Work. On today's pod, I'm very excited to welcome Phil Kirschner. Phil is Senior Expert and Associate Partner of Real Estate and People and Organizational Performance at McKinsey Company, where he advises executive teams on the future of work, employee experience, organizational health, and post-pandemic workplace strategies. This includes the leadership behaviors and change management systems necessary to minimize resistance and accelerate adoption of new ways of working, and why he's joining us as a hero of hybrid work today. Phil, thank you so much for joining us on the Heroes of Hybrid Work. Let's get started.
Thank you so much. Yeah, excited.
So 10 years ago today, you were leading the opening of the first smart working environment at Credit Suisse in New York City. You've been in the workplace strategy space for over a decade now at Credit Suisse, followed by JLL, WeWork, and now McKinsey. What makes you so passionate about this area of research and consulting?
Thank you. Short of it was I was in roles at the bank for 8 years or so before falling into workplace. And I found when working with heads of businesses, CFOs, CAOs, COOs about technology issues or finance issues, really pay attention. They knew that I was a barrier to something that they were doing, a gate they had to get through for risk or for cost. And they paid attention, but it wasn't personal. And it wasn't until I fell into this workplace program and then started coming back around to the leaders that I already knew saying, hey, let's talk about that office that you're sitting in, or we're going to move you into this new environment where everybody shares and it requires radically different ways of working. It was like the pencil went down and all of a sudden, you have my full and undivided attention, because where we sit all day is deeply personal. It's not just about work anymore. And I think the first time I had one of those conversations, it really just struck me. It was like, oh, this is fascinating. A level of your attention that you're giving me, the way of kind of blurring the study of what it means to be human, but also within our company was just fascinating. I fell in love with it immediately and haven't turned back.
Yeah, so you kind of remind me of another one of our guests, Sasha Connor. She worked at Clorox. It seems like 10 years ago, not everyone was talking about this, right? But it seems like you're like an original. You kind of pioneered this, and you moved over 100 managers who were shifting from private offices into
in that project. Yeah.
10 years ago. So tell us a little bit more about that. How did you manage the change, as you said?
I think so. I'm of a class of people, and this is grossly oversimplified, but maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that was right when the super tech forward, highly amenitized workplaces were starting to become popular and public, right? Google and Facebook, Amazon, everyone's working at a normal company going, oh my gosh, look at these offices. They're amazing, right? And this is a few years before kind of WeWork popped onto the map for the first time. But the companies like those I was at, like banks, professional services, even to a degree, life sciences, were the ones that I think were most inclined to explore the ideas around workplace mobility, let's share, not because sharing in and of itself is amazing or fun or easy, but because you sort of say, we at the bank, we don't print cash at the time like a tech firm does. Yeah. So we can't have an office that is half empty all the time. And give you that experience. So if you want, we have to level up the experience for you. Because we're competing, I would say, like much more with Google than with Goldman Sachs necessarily at the time. You have to trade with me. I could put screens in all the rooms. I can level up all the common spaces. I could look into more free coffee or whether bananas, whatever it was. We can make that investment, but not while the space is so inefficient. And that was really what the consulting firms at the time, the boutique architecture, design, and workplace consultancies were telling firms like Credit Suisse, simply pointing out the space is more empty than you think it is. And your people, by and large, don't think so highly of the office that they're in 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week. In terms of their individual productivity. So like they don't really like it. And it's not well utilized. Maybe you can solve both problems at once. And the change management challenge to your question really was trying to be as transparent as possible. Again, like it's empty. You don't like it. I can fix the parts that you don't like and try to make it more diverse, easier to support the range of activities that you and your teams are doing throughout the day, give people choice and autonomy, but you have to agree to share.
Mm-hmm.
And that journey, like arming us and them with the data to understand why we were doing it and the massive amounts of change support to get them over and through that hurdle was a lot of fun, but really, I think, paid off. And yeah, prior to COVID, firms that were exploring these sharing programs, I think were already seeing 20, 30, 40% capacity improvements in their spaces. And really like, so the ship had sailed. COVID just kind of got us a lot faster ahead.
Right, because we're back now, right? There's too much space or people aren't coming in and the experience is also not where it needs to be. And that's why we're here today, right? So let's dive into a little bit of the research that you just mentioned. So you've authored, or contributed to over a dozen articles and research papers at this point on the future workplace. So given all the data and insights you have at your fingertips, what is your long-term view on the evolution of the workplace from Credit Suisse all the way to today?
Yeah, the point that I probably make the most is that I think the future workplace has to be both virtual or remote or digital first, but very much not placeless, which means we're holding like two ideas at once. It's an and, it's not an or. A lot of the debate that rages in the press is, are we going back? Are we staying at home? Most people landing in some form of hybrid, but the word hybrid in and of itself does not carry enough intent about how we work. It's only usually the input of where we work. Like, I want you to be in a certain place, a certain amount of your time. But as you sort of hinted at, like the problem that we had before for most companies where most of us were in the office most of the time was still there was a lot of inefficiency and people didn't like it. Now, the problem's been sort of compounded because most of the offices that we're coming from still don't provide for most of the activities. But now the people in our teams and our companies are much less predictable. So you're dealing with this extra layer of the fact that COVID has exacerbated problems that we had before with meeting culture, with managers being much more comfortable measuring productivity for someone they could see versus someone that they couldn't, with lack of adoption of digital tools or the challenges that are presented when decisions get made kind of live in the room and then never summarized or written down anywhere. All that stuff was there before.
Yeah.
COVID has just like made it much more obvious and much more acute. So a lot of companies are focusing on like guidance to the employees when we think you should be together, but they rarely, if ever, are spending the amount of time helping them reimagine their ways of working to bias towards when they're not. It seems really counterintuitive that in order to make more meaningful time when you are together with someone, which may be in your company's office, it may be at the cafe that's closer to both of your homes than your company's office, but like in order to make the most of that time, you actually have to teach the employees, like arm them almost to not need to be there together.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more that business as usual carries on, we don't have to have our phones. We're not out with our phones, right? I'm like, I know that the work is going. I know that if something urgent or bad happens, like I will hear in a very predictable way. I know that I'm not being judged for my day-to-day productivity by the fact that I am or I'm not somewhere else. So that now we're here. We can be here and do the things that even the kind of fully remote companies would tell you are better off than when you're together. It's the apprenticing, it's mentoring, it's long-term relationship building and solving like really gnarly problems, not the day-to-day like paper passing and getting through your work.
Yeah. So what are some of the strategies people should employ to, get the virtual part right so they can focus on each other in person? Because I actually think that's really interesting and something people haven't really talked about on the podcast before is getting remote right so that you can be the most, I guess, effective when you're in person. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's the sort of study that I'm most proud of in the most recent article that McKinsey published on saying like hybrid can be healthy if it's done right. And we use the word health very intentionally in that context as it pertains to something McKinsey calls organizational health and the Organizational Health Index. It's a 20-year, longer than 20-year survey instrument studying the connection between ways of working and organizational outcomes and performance. Which means like we've been at this for so long, we can show that companies with higher organizational health actually perform better objectively and financially over time. And we found that in this moment of hybrid where everybody was asking me like, what's the right version of hybrid? What's the best version of hybrid? But there is no such thing. There will never be. Because you and I could be identical in every way. Same team, same company, same everything, except like, your boss is amazing and my boss is not so great. So we have a different hybrid experience. But the companies that are fully remote have a completely homogenous workplace experience, right? They know what they're signing up for when they join. They're doing like all day, every day, what you and I are both doing now, just like being in our home. Yeah. Those companies often are very generous with the platforms of like supporting them in their house, right? We buy you a desk, a chair, and a computer and all this to make sure you're really supported. But again, you didn't like become remote because of hybrid or because of COVID. You signed up for this. So it's like very, very obvious. Those companies, to us, the fact that they have scored very consistently incredibly high on this benchmark, which is not a workplace survey, right? It's just connecting ways of working. As a colleague says, like when no one's ever over your shoulder, because you and I are home. Like, when I get off this call, I decide like what to do next. I'm deciding, right? No one's there saying like do this next. So it's a real measure of the culture of the company and the leadership styles and the processes and systems in place that are placeless in a sense, right? And the hallmarks of those cultures that I think really contribute to their higher level of health and making it easier to be so distributed largely ladder up to a culture of writing things down. It means like transparency in what you are meant to be doing, transparency in how things are going, transparency in how things are done. Like a real handbook culture, not just, my team has our little, like we have our Google Docs over here and your team's got some like PowerPoint over there and someone else is using Confluence for a page, like one place all together, whole company. This is how things are done. With
I wish it were that easy. I wish it were so easy, like one place, everybody.
Right. Because what seems crazy, you have to start thinking about like the second and third order effects of that, right? If I can see how things are done in a team that I'm not in, and possibly even get a high level view about that team's current priorities before I go and like set up, if I have an idea, So setting up an hour-long meeting and trying to find the head of that group and emailing random people to like insert my idea or my priority into what they're doing, I can, on my own time,
Oh,
like
look.
recall that information and engage with it and do quite a lot without having to get someone on the phone, which means everyone's being left alone.
Yeah.
But that creates like transparency of decisions. It requires leaders to be more thoughtful, more inspiring, more supportive, more consultative in their style. It's now the
Yeah.
message that I use off that research, even to companies that are very obviously place-based. It's like, I'm not telling you to be remote. Like, that's never going to happen. It doesn't make any sense for you. But I'm telling you that, like, there's a lot to be learned from companies that have built cultures that keep people, like, separated. And it's not that those companies don't get together. They're actually really wonderful in terms of like quarterly or annually larger scale, more thoughtful, more experiential gatherings. But we have huge amounts to learn about the way they work. And the way we work, norms and communication styles are incredibly powerful for overall organizational health, even much more so than just giving someone the choice of when or where to do their work.
Yeah. No, that's really, really interesting. So the strategies that we've implemented in remote environments, you're saying that people have worked so hard on this because they've had to, that applying them to hybrid physical environments is the way to go because they've been so successful from a business results perspective.
It's like even if you're meant to be sat next to someone 95% of the time, operating in a much more consistent way, like we know what we write down, where we write it down, why we have meetings, when we use Slack, when we use email, when I call you, when you text me, all that being like really prescriptive. Like when you take, call it 5% of the choice away by saying it has to be done this way, then that means like, oh, great. We're all operating under this very rigorous framework, which means I don't have to sit here checking my email every 10 minutes while we're on the phone looking for something that might be urgent because we have organizational mandate to say that like, we don't do urgent by email, period, the end. None of us. So I'm like, I can rest easy. I can focus, right? Knowing that if something urgent happens, like my phone is going to ring, which won't happen very often, right?
Right. No, I think that's excellent. Actually, that's excellent. I set expectations with my team right up front about, hybrid work and how we should work and, how quickly should they respond to something and the hours that they should be available. And that kind of frame, I guess, that structure kind of frees them to do their work, right? Because like you said, it sets those expectations and it's like 5% of the choice is taken away so that 95% of the way they work and the way they get things done and the way it's measured, right, is consistent.
Totally. And developers, not surprisingly, most of these fully remote companies are software oriented and take advantage of the fact that software developers for a long time, because of methodologies like Agile, are the most it is the most common in those job typologies to have like explicit rituals and ways of working, right? We meet here. We log issues here. We do our development here. We use Slack for this. We use email for that. We all do it the same way because that gives us these huge blocks of time to do the work, which has just become like a real mirage for a lot of us, like focus time in the asynchronicity of what we're doing in hybrid.
Yeah, so it brings me to one of your recent posts on LinkedIn. It was one of my favorites about the 3 gravitational forces of hybrid. My favorite quote was, "There will never be a fixed or predictable answer to a very flexible and dynamic problem, so we must embrace the chaos and learn from it." Could you tell us a little bit more about the 3 forces and why it presents such a complex challenge in the hybrid work world?
Yeah, and thanks for catching that. It really was a fluke that just in the sort of the days after the North American eclipse, in the popularity of the 3-body problem show on Netflix, which I still have not yet watched and like to, that I caught this explainer video from Neil deGrasse Tyson on like what the three-body problem is in astrophysics, and simply that, well, the math that allows us to like predict when there will be eclipses all relates to the fact that two bodies orbiting each other or two bodies with gravity that affects each other is a very solvable problem. Like, that's not a problem for astrophysicists. Not that I am one. But as soon as you start to introduce like a third, much less fourth or fifth body, it becomes, even though like the math is understood, the predictability is impossible. There's too many forces. It's too complicated given like today's technology. And that was a nice sort of framing of a problem I think we're all feeling, which is like it is impossible to know who is going to be where and when, and whether those bodies are where we work, when we work, who we work with, how we do that work. You pick the variable. You just can't know exactly where to be and when. And the odds that any two people are going to be exactly where you think they're going to be and when are basically like zero to predict them. So instead of trying to say, this is the way, we will work exactly this way, you will come in on these dates, we will do these things, knowing that you're going to miss the planet or whatever the metaphor is. Just say, we have to plan around the uncertainty. We have to build a muscle for just making sure that tomorrow is incrementally better than yesterday was for the experience of our employees, and to share the misses and the failures and things we were trying that seem to be allowing us to do, to like measure output better, to be more predictive about like the experience. But like we just can't, we will never be perfect. So why try?
Yeah. Are there any examples that come to mind that you can share with our listeners where really the three bodies you're talking about are place, time, right, and activities? Is there anything you can share where somebody's actually done it right, or even though it's been chaotic, they've been able to, have some kind of
to do something. I don't know if it's about the predictability, but there's certainly some hallmarks of the way that companies are like managing around the problem. The companies that seem to be the most transformative in their thinking for ways of working are doing a couple things. One, they are naming somebody to be kind of responsible for the employee experience or some variation thereof, to transcend the partnerships between HR, IT, and real estate that ordinarily have been managing by like committee. It's now going much more towards like clear leadership of understanding the employee experience, much in the way that we think about our customer experience. That's one. Two is the behavior and the sort of early statements of executive leaders. Again, instead of saying, I think I figured it out, like this is the way it's going to be, saying, like COVID has changed everything. Far be it for me to know exactly where this is going to go. And that's saying nothing of the introduction of AI into the picture or more freelance forms of working. All new planets are being added like to the ecosystem all the time. But saying nothing of that. I just want tomorrow to be better than yesterday, right? We were going to test, learn, study, like get feedback, and acknowledge failure. Even leadership teams I've seen that have said, oh, like we're trying a new camera in some of our meeting rooms, and we're trying a new way of like designing the meeting room, and we're trying a new process for deciding like when we're even meeting to begin with. So there's like technical experiments, physical experiments, procedural or like process experiments. And when it doesn't go well, that the leaders are the ones out front saying, we tried the new camera. It was better than the old camera, but creepy. We didn't like it for something. And the leaders are the ones saying, like, it's not great, but it's directionally better. So we're going to try another one. And we are going to let you know. Like, we're experimenting on ourselves. That kind of mentality with the culture of writing things down, with a willingness to, like, be transparent about the process to the employees is much better than saying, like, we nailed it. because you haven't. And I say a lot, like anyone who tells you they have this whole system together is lying.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you realize that we are all basically customers of our company's product,
Love
like
that.
the work environment is a product. We're customers. And just like, our bank will never be able to predict like when we should bank online or bank in the branch. And clothing stores don't know exactly what is the right mix of like when I should buy at home or shop in the store, return on the store. You just keep iterating. Right? I also won't like the same style of sweater from now until forever. My preferences will change. Work is the same way. So we just have to embrace this chaos and like orient around it, put the measurement frameworks around it, put the governance around it to just continue to improve in the future.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great, Phil. So I wanted to touch a tiny bit on real estate because I don't often have people on here that have studied real estate as much as you. So have you noticed any corporate real estate trends as many companies switch to hybrid work? How should we think about leasing physical space today versus, 10 years ago? And, has anything just caught your eye that you'd love to share?
Yeah, high level points, I think, I guess, for folks not thinking about real estate usually. So one, we have too much office space, broadly speaking, especially in big cities like New York. There's just too much, right? It was empty, more empty than people thought before. It is more empty now, so it's more acute. And that's just on the lower utilization. So we've got to get rid of some. One. Two, of the spaces that we have left, and again, city like New York, there's a lot of space. A lot of it isn't up to spec for what it needs to be. And some of that is experiential. We want community, we want flexibility, we want technology. If I can get into and out of hotels now, sometimes like without talking to anybody, right? Digital key, pick my room, check in on the phone.
Yeah.
And yet I go to beautiful, white marble office buildings and wait for 20 minutes downstairs for someone to like print me a paper badge. That kind of disconnect is very acute. Plus, just on sustainability, right? New York City, as a simple example, has a law that has gone into place going into place this year, penalizing buildings for lack of energy efficiency. So a lot of older buildings, forget hybrid and COVID and all that stuff, just like they have to be leveled up. So the buildings have to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when it comes to the company occupiers, like the employers taking space in these buildings, my favorite simplification of the trend that we're seeing comes from a bank in Asia, Standard Chartered specifically. They've been public about this. They call their workplace program half the space, twice the experience, which I really like. So because when we're there, we want it to be more higher value. Like we have to level up, but at the same time, we need less of it. Right. And we're seeing that trend broadly where most of our offices, like most of the space literally on the floor in most of our office buildings going into COVID was like for us, my desk, your office, some meeting rooms on the side. Now the ratio is inverting. So most of the stuff is for us as a group, not for me and you individually. Right. Meeting rooms, social spaces, hubs, right? Like what we're coming together for, knowing that if you're going into the office, just sit there on a spreadsheet all day long, like, probably better doing somewhere else. And then the last point is just the absolutely exponential growth of so-called third places. Not your house, not the office, everything else. And we've been working out of Starbucks and the airport lounges like for years. That's not new. But with the supply of that stuff going up, I think over time it will become much more common that we're taking space transactionally. So again, even if like you or I were meant to go and like do a meeting, but you live uptown, I live uptown, the office is downtown, why shouldn't we just meet somewhere that's closer? Not even like a Starbucks. It could be like a real workplace with meeting rooms and Wi-Fi and all the stuff to let us do the work. Yeah. And we're hoping that, the technology is there and that our companies and the supplies, all of it is linked together in such a way that we don't bear the burden of that decision.
Yep.
right? Oh, the meeting was going to be 3 of you. Now it's just 2 of you. It's just you and Jenny. You guys both live uptown and you're both available around lunch. So instead of going into the office, why don't
Yeah.
right, Siri, Alexa, Google, somebody, I'll book it for you.
Right.
It's a great co-working place, between both of you. It's got a room. I'll just do all of it. We go, great. I want that.
Right.
Right.
I love that.
That's where we're
The third
going, and
place.
that's really hard for a lot of the employers. Again, they're we think they're equating a belief that it would be better for you and me to do something together with the fact that we should do that thing in their office. That their office is
Correct.
perfect for everything, for everyone, all the time, which we know from before COVID, it's not, right? Places that are really good for focus tend to be really lousy for social stuff, and the other way around. And we don't have all the right kind of rooms. So why not embrace a more simplified purpose for your office? Our office is really good for this, this, this. For everything else, we will help you find a place that's convenient, good experience, consistent service, that is amazing for the thing that you have to do now. And then,
Yep.
no,
And the second thing is measuring the outcome, right? So
and measuring the outcome.
as you said, continue to iterate. Did that third place actually work? Did you get the work done? What happened in that third place, right?
Right.
And
Most facilities teams still, and I know this feeling, are terrified about the prospect of sending you and me to some other place that they don't control.
right, right,
Because again, if we go and yeah, it was okay, our meeting was fine, but the place it's not great, it's not clean for whatever reason, that there's a feedback mechanism that goes, great, the machine, will never send coworkers to that place again, which is really no different than a lot of corporate travel systems. They'll be well, we don't really like that hotel, so we don't allow employees to book to that hotel. Same idea.
Yeah.
We just are not accustomed to applying that logic, and the workplaces themselves don't have the infrastructure and the booking technology necessarily to allow for oh, I go to the Marriott one day and the Waldorf the next day, right? We'll get there. That's what we have to get to allow for this kind of fluidity that we need.
Correct. Awesome. These are amazing insights, Phil. Thank you so much. They really do take a unique spin on things. So, something I like to ask at the end here is just, did you come to this interview wanting to share something that I just didn't really ask the right question? What thing do you want our listeners to walk away with today that maybe I just didn't get out of you yet?
Maybe not to forget. The first point I would have said was that virtual first and not places. We have to spend equal times helping people not be together in order to make it better when they are together in places that should be better for being together. But beyond that, just I say, it's if you Googled future work McKinsey in, let's say, the fall of 2019, you would have gotten basically 2 topics. One is automation and whether it's Gen AI, robotic, all that, that was the future work before. And then the other topic was the explosion, continued growth of gig, freelance, contract, independent work. And those 2 things have not gone away. I think, unfortunately, post-COVID, hybrid became the future work. Let's all talk about the future work. It's hybrid. And forgetting that these 2 currents were still there. And so my message, especially to companies, I'm sure not your listeners necessarily, who are trying to revert back to the old way of working, are forgetting. The more freelance, fluid, dynamic, contract that your workforce becomes, which is becoming even easier with AI, allowing for bits of work to be broken down and farmed out. The more fluid they become, the less and less likely it is you can plan around everyone being in one place or going back the old way. So we have to remember the full focus of what the future work encompasses when trying to solve for what hybrid should or shouldn't be.
Is there anything that comes to mind for you with AI that people should, I really like your point about gig economy and AI. I mean, that hasn't gone away, right? But now we have this laser focus on hybrid, but it means these things haven't gone away. So, what have you learned over, the past years here about AI? Is there something people should really be paying attention to? There's just a lot of noise right now.
There's a lot of noise. I think maybe the connection is that the culture of writing things down that comes with the fully remote set.
Sure.
Consistently, meeting notes and conversations that are written down and use of asynchronous voice and video. The more that we create that stuff, the more the machine can see it. And it's incredibly powerful to be able to go summarize that meeting. What did I miss? Catch me up. Write this in a tone that works for me or for you. But if all the conversations for the moment, we're not being all chipped and tracked. So if you and I did this on the street, there'd be no record of it. But now that there is, it makes it easier to consume content, to personalize it for me, to respond, to know where to focus. They are linked. And saying nothing of the ability to make it even easier for us to do a lot of stuff on our own.
Yep.
Instead of needing to be next to someone else to do a lot of it. And it's a pretty rude awakening for the knowledge work set, just how much and how radical this change is going to be.
I like how you're kind of, yes, AI is used for productivity. We all have that. But I like how you layer on this level of transparency to make the business work. So what if we're just using all of these things in a vacuum, right? And we're not actually using them for that kind of transparency to build efficiencies into businesses. So I really like your take on that. It's not just about the meeting notes. It's about making it, transparent for everybody in the organization to look at it to get, their best work done.
Right. And right now, the sort of ChatGPT that everyone is exploring with is I ask it to tell me something about, information I know exists out there. Hey, what happened in the meeting? That's my co-pilot, right? The next round is where those kinds of processes are running a little bit behind the scenes. And so you sort of wake up to an email, written for you.
Right.
Right. Where you should go. And that connects back to the place. You can't make doors and walls and all that move automatically, but you can customize people's journeys through spaces and suggest actions to you. Hey, you were mentioned here, not just you were mentioned, but I think you should follow up with this person. Giving you something really to work on, because if you do that, these outcomes will happen. We're way off from that, but
I love that.
Those interventions and those nudges will come that will help maximize productivity, but we got to give people choice to do it.
That would be so cool. So cool. Mind-blowingly cool.
Creepy, but the future at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Phil. So, how can people find you? I think a lot of your research is fascinating. A lot of your insights are fascinating. Is there someplace people can go to read more, to learn more?
Yeah, generally speaking, I'm pretty chatty on LinkedIn. So follow me there. I share anything that I come across, both our research and otherwise. And the best and sort of the reports of research, at least at McKinsey's put out on this multidisciplinary topic, are all at mck.co/workplace.
Easy enough.
Easy
all
enough.
Right, Phil. Well, such a pleasure meeting you and having you on the show. Really can't thank you enough.
No, thank you so much. Have a good one, Jenny.